Okay, so anybody who follows me on Twitter knows that I have a beef with basically any team that isn't OKC or Indiana playing small ball, especially relative to your normal lineup. So, for example, the Warriors are a small ball team, but they have some lineups that are smaller than others. In Mavs Thunder, I chose the Dallas Mavericks in this series because I thought that OKC would struggle with the Mavs' size, and there are some interesting dynamics happening in that series despite Dallas being up 2-1. First, in those first two games, I think that the Thunder did a really good job of keeping, whether it was keeping Dallas off the offensive glass or crashing the offensive glass themselves to uh, just make that margin between the two teams smaller. There are ways that the Thunder, because they are a great team despite being a horrible rebounding team, have countered the way that they lose the possession battle on the glass. One of those is being the best team at turning other teams over, so forcing turnovers. I think they lead the league in steals, both steals per game and steal percentage. All of their players have a really good nose for the ball at the point of attack, and so they give ball handlers a really tough time. They give closeout attackers a really tough time. So they're able to sort of mitigate their limitations size-wise that hurts them in rebounding uh, in being just a really good point of attack defense in that way. However, I chose the Mavs because I thought they're just going to win the glass. OKC was largely either winning that battle in games 1 and 2, even though Dallas won game 2, or uh, actually winning the offensive rebounding battle in those games because they were just they're a small team, but they're pretty athletic and energetic when it comes to winning possessions, whether it is diving for loose balls, steals, and sometimes crashing the offensive glass, even though they're overall not a great offensive rebounding team. However, in this game three, there was a point in this game where the Dallas Mavericks had a 15-1 edge on the offensive glass. So they had grabbed 15 offensive rebounds and the Thunder had only grabbed one. And the game was tied. So that point in the game sort of tells you how well OKC is able to perform in all of the other categories to mitigate that. Because in any other game where the other team has 15 offensive rebounds on you, no matter how many you have, really, you're probably
Yeah,
down
it's gonna be a
at least,
yeah,
you know,
rough
a,
time.
a substantial margin. But it also told you how Dallas's size was giving OKC trouble. So even though they were able to force misses, and even on some of these offensive rebounding situations, they were able to either recover to the guy who had the ball so he couldn't just put it back, or recover out to whoever he was passing to, so that even though you got the offensive rebound, you're not getting the second chance points. The Dallas centers, in this case, it's Daniel Gafford is the starting center and Derek Lively, who's a rookie. They were really struggling to help on offense, both in this game and in the other games in this series. I think that they struggled to finish at the rim because of Chet Holmgren's presence, and he's the center on the OKC Thunder. He's been a really great rim protector all season, so that didn't surprise me at all necessarily. But there were other situations where Gafford, in particular, struggled to finish over small players. Like he just has a weird approach to trying to lay the ball in and whatever. OKC also tagged both Gafford and Lively relatively high on their pick and rolls with Luca, so they were a little further from the basket, so they couldn't just kind of go up and dunk it. Sometimes they would have to try to go for a slightly more creative finish or pass the ball out. But uh, I think Gafford in particular really struggles with decision making when he's in that short roll situation. Eventually, in this game, because Gafford was struggling so much, Jason Kidd subs him out for Lively to close the game. And the Mavs went up after they were up 8 or something, and then the Thunder were able to cut the lead to 5. And Jason Kidd was like, "We need to keep scoring," and the Thunder are starting to cut into our lead. But the Mavs were still getting a few stops in a row, even though they were struggling to score on the other side, particularly in the half court. Eventually, when there are 5 minutes left in the game and Dallas is up 5 points, OKC has struggled to score with Derek Lively protecting the rim. He's also been a really good rim protector this season for Dallas. That's why I had him as at least top 4. I don't remember if I had him third for rookie of the year votes because I just think he's had a really big impact for Dallas, particularly defensively. So with 5 minutes left in this game, the Thunder start the hack a lively strategy to try to get back in this game. And I don't know if this started. I don't know which centers this started with. I think Hack a Shaq was very popular back when Shaq was playing because everyone knew he couldn't make free throws, but you also knew you couldn't stop him. And you're behind, and you want to try to get back in the game. You start just fouling them every possession and making them go to the free throw line, and hopefully they miss. And often they do because they're usually not great free throw shooters.
Hey, the Nuggets kind of lived with some of that on Gobert. Just that kind of reminded me, like we had some bad plays where we were letting Gobert
Right.
like
I mean,
slip
you
out, and
should you
you know,
should you should just hack Rudy at the rim
yeah,
if because
just hacking.
he's just gonna put that up if you were like late on your short roll tag or whatever it is, and he's just under the rim. You should do that. But it's a little different at the end of games when you're like, we need to get back in this before the clutch, or you're in the clutch and you're just like, we need a way to stop the clock and keep giving ourselves chances to score. So what often happens in these situations when the center isn't able to make their free throws is they get subbed out because the team that is up doesn't want to lose their lead. I thought that that was a terrible strategy because Lively had been so impactful defensively. On the very first Hack a Lively possession that OKC employs, with lots of time left in the game, 5 minutes, 5 point game, I've never seen OKC resort to this kind of tactic this early in the game. They're not even technically in the clutch yet. Jason Kidd subs out Derek Lively because he missed both free throws. Even though I think he missed both free throws, and then okay, they got it. The Mavs got to stop. And I think the next time down on offense, he either called a timeout or there was a dead ball situation because the ball was knocked out of bounds. Whatever. He subs Lively out. He goes with PJ Washington at the 5. OKC keeps playing the way that they're playing. And so now both teams are playing super small ball, except OKC has a center on the floor. It is Chet Holmgren. So now he's the biggest guy on the floor. And on the very next OKC offensive possession, they get a miss on Shea, and then OKC proceeds to get 3 or 4 offensive rebounds in a row on that possession that ends with a Chet Holmgren putback because the Mavs can't defensive rebound with Derek Lively off the floor, with a center off the floor because they had neither Gafford nor Lively on at that point. And before that possession even happened, I saw Kidd sub out Lively and I tweeted out, "Okay, this game is over because the Mavs are they're not being serious. Jason Kidd's not being serious right now. If you're going to try to play small ball against the best small ball team in the NBA." So on the very next possession, Kidd subs Lively back onto the floor. He's like, okay. Kidd puts Lively back in, and I'm like, you better leave him on the floor. I don't want this offense defense substitution pattern happening. Anyway, Lively helps them get multiple stops down the stretch. It turns into the free throw game. They do the hack a lively thing a couple more times. On a couple of times, he makes both free throws. On a couple of times, he just makes one of the free throws. Then eventually, the Mavs they're able to hold on and win that game. But I talk about this because I have this beef with coaches who have this urge to find any reason to go small. I actually don't think that Jason Kidd has been this for most of the playoffs. I think it's one of the reasons that the Mavs were able to win the Clippers series, in addition to Kawhi either not being out or not playing like himself at all. But one of the things that the Clippers really struggled with was some of the double big lineups that the Mavs used to counter the Clippers' super small lineups uh, that they were trying to do because they also couldn't score with Gafford or Lively at the rim. So they were like, we need to just open up some space here. And I really appreciated that in round 1 from Jason Kidd because he's like, we need size on there. And even though their bigs are not most skilled players, I talked about the struggles that Gafford had in this game, and Lively wasn't that much better on offense. It's one of the reasons that they were struggling to score down the stretch of this game. However, they provide so much value defensively, especially relative to having them off the floor, that it's worth it basically all of the time. And it's one of the things that bugs me about Ty Lue this season. It's the reason I thought that the James Harden trade was so good for the Clippers for most of the season was that his uh, ability as a pick and roll creator at that point guard position was to keep the bigs efficient and involved on offense. Like he always got them in great spots, which made it so that Ty Lue didn't have the excuses to take the bigs off the floor. Like, oh no, our offense is stagnating. Got to get Zubats off the floor, even though he's providing a ton defensively. He's also helping you on offense by offensive rebounding, even if he's not, taking initial shots. And defensive rebounding because the Clippers are a team that struggles to rebound, but even more so when their centers are off the floor. Whatever. So this is my rant, my small ball in the Mavs Thunder series rant that I just had to get out there because I don't think that most of the time it's a good idea to try to go super small and try to do this positionless basketball thing, but especially against the best small ball slash positionless basketball team in the NBA, in the OKC Thunder. You are not going to beat them at that game. And I'm glad that Jason Kidd realized that within a possession because it enabled his team to hold on to the lead that they worked so hard to build and win this playoff game.
Is
And
Hack
seeing
Lively coming back up? Is Hack Lively going to come back though?
doing this at the end of the game is just a thing that a lot of teams would do. Doing it with 5 minutes left in that close of a game was less about trying to get back in it, or it was about that, but it was more about playing this guy off the floor. Like we need him off the floor because we can't score with him on the floor. So I saw it more as an admission than a strategy that I think they would employ in like a later game. So yeah, I think Dagnall made a lot of interesting decisions in this game that I didn't necessarily agree with. Chief of which was starting Josh Giddey in both halves. You always like give your starters a chance, whatever, every game, even though they're
Yeah.
nuking your spacing, etc. But once you realize, like, okay, this isn't working anymore,
It may be the last we see of Giddy.
it's not going to be.
Damn it,
um,
Mark Dagnall. Get it
The thing
together.
with it is that having to playing Giddy off the floor forces the Thunder to go smaller, which helps their spacing and helps their offense. But it also, unless and Dagnall did try some of this where he would put big Jalen Williams, Jay Will on the floor in Giddy's spot, which is something that he doesn't do against most teams. That just tells you how much issue he perceives the Mavs size is giving them. And that's the Mavs without Maxi Kleber right now. This is a PJ Washington slash either Derek Lively or Daniel Gafford front court. And
Mm-hmm.
Dagnall sometimes feels the need to go double big against them. Now they could still win the series. The games the Mavs have won have been close, and I think Shea could play better. I think he's been struggling to get some separation toward the end of the last couple of games because of how the Mavs are overloading on him. And he's missing some, I think, pretty easy passing reads, but they're going to watch film, whatever, get better at that. Especially with Isaiah Joe on the floor in place of them. They have great shooters that are out there that can knock down shots and have been throughout these games. This series in particular, even though it's not like the worst, matchup that OKC could have faced, that kind of pokes at this core issue they have with the size, is shining a light on it in such a way that I think makes me feel good regardless of the outcome of the series. I'm like, I'm not crazy. Like this team is really good, but they do have this really big issue that they need to address. Anyway.
If you've listened to us, we thank you so much. Hopefully, we have good news for you next time you tune in, no matter what team you support. But please remember to like, subscribe, share, retweet us on Twitter, hit the notification bell, leave reviews, comment if you like. We're always on Twitter. Follow us, come talk to us. We interact with as many people as we can. And remember, winning is fun and losing sucks.
Winning is so fun.